Hi, you guys. So to start this week off, we are going to be reviewing some things so that we can move on and finish up geometry. So the first thing we're going to review today is the area of different polygons, which are different sided shapes. So these are all two-dimensional shapes. So this is important to know how to do so that when we move on to surface area and volume and really just finish geometry, this is something that we need to review and clear those cobwebs that are maybe forming in there since we haven't done it for so long, or it feels like it's been so long. So we're just going to review the formulas. We're going to review some of the different tactics on how to solve these and why it works. And then we're going to also hopefully practice along the way. So if you have a piece of paper, a whiteboard and marker, that might be helpful so that you can follow along with me, and we'll do some of the problems together so that you can make sure that you understand and remember how to do these things. Okay, so first we are going to look at the formula for rectangles, squares, and parallelograms. So the formula for these is area equals length times width, and sometimes you'll see that as base times height, which means the same thing. So we're going to look at this picture right here. This image shows us why this formula works. So you'll see here that because when I fill up empty space inside of a 2D shape, the only way that I can take up space is with square units. So anytime we are writing the answer for area, we need to make sure that it is in square units. You will notice that this is being taken up with squares, not circles, not stars, not hearts, because those would all leave empty space. Squares can be stacked with no empty space, and it can take up space inside of any two-dimensional shape. So square units, it can be square inches, square feet, square centimeters, whatever units you are using that is appropriate for that shape. So here we have an array that has 8 rows or 8 squares in a row being repeated 6 times. So it's 8 plus 8 plus 8 plus 8, 6 times. And so that's why this formula works for any rectangle, basically any quadrilateral except for trapezoids. So because they're their own beast, because they are not a parallelogram with 2 parallel sides. So the area of this particular shape right here that you see on the screen is 6 times 8, which is 48. So there are going to be 48 squares here. I could count them all up, or I could just multiply them together to figure that out. Okay, so here we have a parallelogram. In fact, let's put this in present mode. And we can see here. So we have this whole entire base, but the problem is that my height has to be straight up and down. So I promise you, most of the time when you see these, they are going to give you the area or the length of this slanted side right here. We do not need this number. This number is not necessary, because if I were to go to Disneyland or go to Lagoon and they were going to measure my height, I'm not going to stand like this. I'm not going to slouch. I'm not going to slant to the side. I'm going to stand straight up and down so that I can be as tall as I possibly can to get on that ride. So I want to make sure that this is straight up and down anytime, whether it's triangles or parallelograms. I want to make sure that I am making the base and the height a perpendicular line. So we're making a 90-degree angle. Never use a slanted line to measure the height of any shape. The height has to be straight up and down and perpendicular with the line that is going across right here. So the base here would be 6 and the height would be 4. So you'd get a total of 24. Okay, we're going to come out of present mode here. Now I'm going to put this one up on the board, and I want you to try to solve it on your own. So here is another parallelogram, and I want you to decide which numbers you're going to use. So go ahead and push pause right now, and you can figure out the area of this parallelogram. Pause. Okay, so let's figure out what you did. So remember, and I'm going to use a little drawing tool here, that we have the base, whatever your base is, you want it to sit flat on the floor. So if this is flat on the floor, I'm going to look for the height that goes straight up and down. So remember, I want to make a perpendicular line, which is like making an upside down T right here and making a 90-degree angle. So I'm going to be using 8 and I'm going to be using 4. I am not, whoa, I completely covered that up. We are not going to be using the 7. They're going to throw that in as a decoy to try to get you to use it, and you don't need to use that. We only need base and height. So we have 8, we're going to see how good my math skills are here, times 4, because that is my length and my width, or my base and my height, and that gives me a grand total of 32. So if you got 32, good job. All right, let's move on. So now we are going to move on to area of triangles. Okay, so I'm going to show you, if you forgot or if you don't remember, and we'll see if I can figure this out here. Okay, so to find the area of this rectangle, we are going to do base times height, right? Just like we have practiced. But triangles are basically the exact same thing, except we have one extra step. Because when I have a rectangle such as this, we'll see if I can get this figured out. So here I have a rectangle. When I cut it in half from one corner to the next, you can't even see that because it's not right. Let's figure this out here. There we go. Now we have a rectangle. So here we have a rectangle, and when I cut that in half from one corner to the next, I am left with two identical triangles. So because of that, I'm going to use the same formula for a rectangle, but to find the triangle, I'm just going to use half of that. So it's going to be base times height, and then we're just going to take that number and just cut it in half or divide by 2. Okay, so let's take a look at some triangles here. Okay, so I'm going to do this one with you, and then we'll have you guys try a couple on your own here. So again, they're going to give you 3 numbers, but we want our base to be something that sits flat on the ground, and we want our height to be something that is going straight up and down. We do not want to use the slanted line because it's not necessary. So we're going to use the 12, and we're going to use the 5 because this is my base, and this is how tall it is. But remember, you cannot forget to cut it in half because, we'll see if I can get this to work again. Oh man. Here is my rectangle, and that's base times height, and then I cut it in half, and we have a triangle. I should have made these a little smaller so it fit in the screen a little bit better. So 5 times 12 is 60. And we're going to take that 60 and we're going to divide it by 2, and that would give you a total of 30. So the area of this triangle is 30. All right, now you guys are going to try one on your own. And go ahead and push pause. Okay, so here we have a base of 4. Let's go back here. So we have a base of 4 and a height of 6, straight up and down from the base, 6 times 4. So 6, wow, that's a lovely 6. 6 times 4, I should have a mouse, but I don't, is 24, and we're going to take that 24, wow. Hopefully you guys can draw a lot better than I can with a mouse. And we're going to take that 24 and we are going to divide it by 2 because we need to cut this in half because it's half of a rectangle or a square, and that gives us a total of 12. Remember, when we are finding area, it is always in square units, so you would do 12 square centimeters. All right, let's try one more here. Okay, go ahead and get out your pencil and let's try this one out. Go ahead and push pause. Okay, so we have a base of 14. Let's get out of here. We have a base of 14 and we have a height. So notice how this is a scalene obtuse triangle, and so it's not going to have a straight up and down line. We have to make that ourselves. So we're going to find a point from the base that we can create a straight line that's going to take us to the top of the triangle. So we have 14, which is our base, and then we are going to times that. Oh my goodness, this is so hard. And we're going to times that by 10, and that gives us 140. And then we're going to take that 140 and we're going to do what? Say it out loud so I know you know it, even though I can't hear you. 140, we're going to cut it in half or divide it by 2. 140 divided by 2 is going to give us a grand total of 70. So if you got 70, give yourselves a big pat on the back, maybe a little silent cheer or even a loud cheer if no one's around. And this is not just 70, it is 70 square meters. Perfect. Okay, now we're going to move on. So the last thing we're going to cover is large areas or irregular shapes. So this is really important because if you are looking at the world around you, there's actually a lot of shapes that are not perfect squares and rectangles, and they're not perfect triangles. So we have to figure out a way that we can take irregular, awkward shapes and find the area. This is going to be important when you are laying flooring, when you're painting a wall, when you are, you know, trying to figure out how to construct something. There's going to be shapes that we really can't find the area of unless we decompose them into smaller shapes. We know how to find rectangles. We know how to find parallelograms. We know how to find triangles. So we're just going to cut these larger shapes into shapes that we know and understand. So here we're going to take a look at, we can pretend this is a bedroom. Okay, so here is an irregular shape. I'm going to find a way that I can cut up, slice it up, decompose it into shapes that I know and understand. So I'm going to cut this right here. But here's the problem. When I make a cut, sometimes, and that's a really ugly cut, but sometimes I am left with some sides that I don't know. So I have to look at the information around me and I have to figure out what that missing side is. So if this entire line right here is 6 and up to this point is 3, I've got to ask myself, what is this going to be to make a grand total of 6? And I know that 3 plus 3 is 6. So now I have all the dimensions that I need. So I'm going to start with this little guy right here. And I'm going to use the same formula that we used before for rectangles. Base times height, 3 times 2 is 6. Now I'm going to look at this rectangle right here. So I have a base of 3, a height of 5, and that's going to give me a grand total of 15. So then I take my 15, I add it with my 6, and I look at the grand total of area that I need to find, and that is going to be 21 square units, or square feet in this case. Okay, so that's going to be your grand total. Let's look at this one right here. I'm going to enlarge this. I want you to pause. I want you to find this one out on your own. Okay, go ahead and pause. Okay, let's go ahead and look at this one. And we actually already have this one sliced up for us. So right here, it made a line for us with that triangle. So now I have a triangle and I have a rectangle that I have to find the area of. So here, I already have my dimensions. I don't have any missing pieces here. I have 16 times 7, which is 112. And I just like to write the area right here inside the shape so that I know that I've covered that whole area. Now I have to find the area of the triangle. So the only thing that I'm missing here is this line right here, which is my base. So I do know that this entire line is 16 because it's identical to this one. Up to this point where the triangle starts is 8. I have to figure out or ask myself, what is the rest of this line going to be to equal a grand total of 16? And that is going to be 8, because 8 plus 8 is 16. Okay, let's finish that up. Okay, so now I have to ask myself, what is this line right here? Because this whole entire space right here is 13. Well, I know up to this point, it's 7 because of this guy right here. So what do I have to add to 7 to make a grand total of 13? Well, that's going to be 6. So just this line right here is 6. So 6 times 8 is 48, but that is not my area because I have to then divide it by 2. 48 divided by 2 is 24. And then I add these two together to find the total area. So 24 plus 112 is going to give me a grand total of 136. Perfect. Okay. We're going to do one more and then we are going to be done and you guys are going to do some practice on your own. Here we have a trapezoid. So this trapezoid has a formula. If you remember the formula, fantastic. I'm going to go over it again. The other thing about trapezoids is because it's an irregular shape, you can actually cut it up into squares and triangles too, if that makes more sense to you. But I'm going to use the formula that we have talked about or that hopefully you've discussed. And that formula is base 1 plus base 2 times it by the height, and then we're going to cut it in half. Because 2 trapezoids put together is going to equal a parallelogram or a rectangle, and a trapezoid is just half of that. So it's kind of similar to triangles. So here I'm going to do base 1, which is 4. Let's get our drawing here. So base 1 plus base 2, goodness gracious, okay, which is 9. So 4 plus 9. Now I need to make sure that I do this first because that's going to give me the whole base of the rectangle if I were to put 2 of them together. And then I'm going to times that by the height, which is 5. There we go. So 4 plus 9 is 13, plus 5, or sorry, times 5 is 65. And I'm going to take that amount and I'm going to cut it in half or divide it by 2. So your answer should be 32.5. So 32.5 square centimeters is going to be the answer to this one. So hopefully you were able to try that one out and hopefully you were successful. Feel free to go back and try these again. If you need more practice problems, you'll get those a little bit later too. Okay, so we are going to, for today, you are going to have some practice. There's also going to be an activity where you guys are going to find polygons in the world around you. You guys are at home. You guys have lots of space and time that you can find area in the real world, because this is a real world skill and you can find out you can find lots of polygons in the space that you're in. So whether that's a TV, a picture on the wall, maybe it's some tiles on your floor, or maybe it's an entire room. It depends on how, extravagant you want to get. So your first task is to find 6 rectangles or squares in the space in the area around you. And if you have a measuring tape or a ruler, that's perfect. If you don't, then just find a unit that you can use, whether that's a paper clip or a pencil, and you're just going to find the length and the width using something that is consistent. So just find some type of a unit to use as a measuring device, and you're going to use those as your units. Just make sure you're using the same one so that it's consistent. So then you're going to find 6 squares or rectangles, 4 triangles, and then you're going to find 2 irregular spaces. So that could be maybe a room where the flooring is a little awkward. You can find maybe something on the wall, maybe there's something outside. So you're going to find a space that is a little irregular that you have to decompose into squares and rectangles, and you're going to find the total area. So good luck, and I hope that this was helpful. And if you have any questions, just go ahead and reach out to any one of us, and we are more than happy to help you.